Welcome to Corvette Today, the show that talks about everything Corvette, with your host Steve Garrett, lifetime member of the National Corvette Museum, president of the Corvette Club of Kansas City, Missouri, and radio disc jockey at the #1 radio station in Kansas City for over 45 years. Here's Steve Garrett.
Thanks for listening and watching Corvette Today, the show that talks about everything Corvette, and the only current podcast dedicated to Corvette. I'm your host, Steve Garrett. I appreciate you tuning in. Corvette Today is brought to you by Wheelcraft. Want to dress up your Corvette with bright chrome or black chrome wheels? Visit wheelcraft.com and learn about their advanced PVD chrome finishing. They can refinish your wheels or offer a wheel exchange for most models, and it comes with a 5-year warranty. Visit wheelcraft.com today or call them at 833-840-5334. You can listen to Corvette Today on all podcast platforms. You can also listen on your smart device. Just say, "Hey Google," or "Alexa, play the podcast called Corvette Today," and you're connected. And be sure to visit the Corvette Today website. It's CorvetteToday.com. You can access everything there, including the Corvette Today merchandise store. You can also join our Corvette Today Facebook group there as well. Also, make sure you sign up for the Corvette Today emails, notifications, and updates at CorvetteToday.ck.page. And if you like YouTube, be sure to subscribe to our Corvette Today YouTube channel. See all Corvette Today episodes on YouTube as well. And be sure to patronize our flagship sponsors of Corvette Today, MidEngineCorvetteForum.com, the forum that focuses on the new mid-engine C8 Corvette. Meet a lot of fellow Corvette enthusiasts like yourself at MidEngineCorvetteForum.com. Soul Performance Products. Developed and manufactured in the United States, the Soul Performance Products exhaust portfolio has been tailored to elevate the experience of the world's most exciting sports cars, including the latest generation of the Corvette. Soul Performance Products at SOULPP.com, the official performance exhaust of Corvette Today. Aerolarri Wheels, a true forged wheel with over 20 unique styles to choose from for your C8 and wide-body versions of the C7, C6, and C5 Corvette. It's an amazing value, starting at only $23.88 for a set of 4 fully forged wheels. And use the promo code CT111 and get $100 off your purchase. Visit Aerolarri.com. That's AEROLARRI.com. And use the promo code CT111 for your $100 discount. Ciocca Corvettes. If you're a Corvette enthusiast, and I know you are since you're listening and watching Corvette Today, then you need to know about Ciocca Corvette. They're based in Atlantic City, where you can find over 100 new and pre-owned vets on the lot and inbound. Ciocca also ships Corvettes all over the country, custom ordered to your specifications. They're staffed with experienced pros who can answer all your questions. So don't compromise. Visit CioccaCorvette.com. That's CIOCCA Corvette.com and find out more. Chevrolet. Together, let's drive. And a shout out to Canadian Corvette Forum and Corvette Forum, welcoming Corvette enthusiasts from around the world. My guest on Corvette Today created and invented the head-up display for Corvette. Now, head-up displays have been very popular safety features in modern cars, but it wasn't always that way. As a matter of fact, HUDs were introduced by GM 11 years before becoming enormously successful on the Corvette. And we're going to talk about that today. My guest is Steve Stringfellow. Steve, welcome to Corvette Today.
Thank you for having me, Steve.
You bet. You're here in studio. This is great. Steve lives in the Kansas City area. I don't get a chance to have people in studio that much, so it's great to have you here. First of all, Steve, let's talk about your childhood. Tell me where you grew up, and did you come from a car family?
Well, I was originally born in Santa Monica, California in 1956, and I grew up in Palos Verdes, California. Back then, it was kind of a rancho and farmland. It's not really that way anymore.
Right.
I guess my mother's first car was a beautiful white 1962 Chevrolet Corvette.
Ooh, so close.
Almost, but at least we were in the Chevy family then.
Yeah.
And I remember there were lots of Eldon and Mattel engineers who had families and owned homes in the area. So I grew up with lots of influence of Hot Wheels and slot cars and anything with a Cox Nitro 4.9 engine.
That's pretty cool. Yeah. So was Corvette the car for you when you were growing up?
Oh, gosh. Yeah, Corvettes were always a childhood dream growing up. And I think it was the same dream for every kid who followed the space race back during the Mercury and Gemini and Apollo programs.
Oh, yeah.
My Cub Scout scrapbook was full of pictures of astronauts driving Corvettes, and I don't remember seeing any in the neighborhood, unfortunately. I would definitely have remembered that.
Yeah.
By the way, I guess I did own a Schwinn Stingray bike, though.
That's close. For a kid, that's as close as you're going to get to a Corvette, right?
You betcha.
What did you want to be when you grew up? Were Corvettes part of your childhood?
I was kind of a tinkerer as a kid, and I guess I still am. I built lots of models. We had a workbench and tools in our garage, and somehow I just kind of had this knack for taking things apart and learning how to fix them and just kind of seeing how they worked. But I think the biggest influence automotive-wise was my childhood friend Bill. His grandfather had a family-owned auto parts store in Alameda, California. As we got older and began to learn how to drive, we kind of got jobs delivering parts to garages and repair shops throughout the southern Los Angeles area. Sometimes I'd drive across town to deliver just a small set of ignition points, or sometimes I'd have to deliver a big orange-painted 180-pound Chevy short block. So we unloaded the trucks and stocked everything. We worked the catalogs at the counter, helping customers find obscure parts and fasteners. And sometimes we worked in the machine shop, sandblasting the surfacing heads, grinding and installing valves and springs, or turning brake drums. There was always work to do and lots to learn about cars. And even though we were teenagers, we were never bored. We always got our hands really dirty and came home exhausted.
Well, that's a good thing, I think, right?
Oh, yeah.
So where did you go to college? What did you study in school?
Well, the Vietnam War was raging at the time, and I signed up for the draft at 16. And my father really didn't save for my college at all, and I guess he was a bit uncertain about what my future would be. After the war ended, to be honest, at 18 years old, I didn't know what I wanted to do. After a while, my father decided to use part of his retirement savings to send me to college. I was accepted at the University of California at Santa Cruz, where I took my GE classes and dabbled a little bit in physics and architecture and environmental design related subjects. Although I liked designing structures, and it was beautiful up there, up in the trees.
Oh, yeah.
I could tell it just wasn't the right place for me to be. I was more kind of geared towards product and transportation things like cars and airplanes.
Yeah, that makes sense. So what were your degrees in, Steve?
So after moving, I took a big student loan. I moved to California State University at Long Beach, and after 4 years and working part-time, I got my Bachelor of Science degree in Product Design Engineering. I'd really finally found my calling.
That's really cool. Well, I tell you what, buddy, let's take our break right now. When we come back, we're going to talk about your career in the business world, which included Hughes Aircraft along with GM. That's coming up next with Steve Stringfellow here on Corvette Today.
We all know that wheels make the car. Wheelcraft's PVD chrome finish in bright chrome or black chrome will take your Corvette to new levels. And it comes with a 5-year warranty. Durability is a defining feature of the Wheelcraft finish. Their PVD chrome is superior to traditional chrome, with a finish that is brake dust resistant and cleans effortlessly with soap and water. Wheelcraft offers factory wheel exchange for select C4 through C8 models, or they can apply the PVD finish to your current wheels. No matter what generation you own, Wheelcraft will transform the look of your Corvette. With every Corvette comes a unique story, and Wheelcraft has embraced this idea. When you purchase your new set of wheels, you receive a lifetime membership to the Wheelcraft Pit Crew, granting you access to your own page on Wheelcraft's website, where you can post pictures and tell your Corvette story. Visit our website at wheelcraft.com or call 833-639-4231. Arrive in style with Wheelcraft.
The Radiator Grill Store offers protection for your C8's front radiators and side intakes. They also carry front strut tower covers to prevent rusting and pooling water, all with do-it-yourself installation. Get 10% off your total purchase with promo code CT10. See the full line of products at radiatorgrillstore.com.
The National Corvette Restored Society is celebrating its 50th anniversary this year. 50 years of affirming and promoting the preservation and restoration of the Corvette. 50 years as the foremost Corvette collector car organization for building value with its prestigious awards. Have you ever considered joining NCRS? Over 70,000 people have. We're so much more than just the nuts and bolts. The NCRS flight judging program can and often does increase the value of America's sports car by researching and publishing the leading tech manuals and judging guides for the 1953 through 2007 Corvettes, by training the best judges and by hosting local, regional, and national judging events. And when you join, you'll get award-winning magazines like Corvette Restore and Driveline all throughout the year. Joining is simple and easy. Just go to ncrs.org and sign up. There are NCRS chapters all throughout the U.S. and all around the world. Chances are there's a local chapter near you. So join NCRS today at ncrs.org. We come for the Corvettes. We stay for the friendships made along the way.
When you want to buy a Corvette, or any Chevrolet for that matter, get yours from Hendrick Chevrolet Shawnee Mission, located in Kansas City. Hendrick Chevrolet is the largest Corvette dealership and showroom in the Midwest. With a knowledgeable sales staff and Corvette sales specialists on hand, they'll help you build the Corvette of your dreams, and they ship nationwide. With Corvette certified master mechanics on site and a huge parts department with over 24,000 parts and $2 million in inventory, Hendrick Chevrolet is well equipped to take care of your every need. From sales to service to collision repair, Hendrick Chevrolet has you covered. Visit ChevyUSA.com or call 913-384-1550.
And now, back to Corvette Today with your host and my husband, Steve Garrett.
Thanks for checking out Corvette Today on podcast and YouTube. It's the only current podcast dedicated to Corvette. Corvette Today is brought to you by Wheelcraft. You want your Corvette looking its best, don't you? Well, dress it up with bright chrome or black chrome wheels. Visit wheelcraft.com and learn about their advanced PVD chrome finishing. They can refinish your wheels or do a wheel exchange, and you get a 5-year warranty. So visit wheelcraft.com today or give them a call, 833-639-4231. I'm your host, Steve Garrett. With me is Steve Stringfellow. Steve invented the head-up display for Corvette. In this second segment, we're going to talk about Steve's career in the business world. Steve, where did you work right after you graduated college?
Back in 1979, I was working part-time with a small startup called Robinson Helicopter Company. It's not that way anymore.
Yeah, they're huge now.
They're huge. And I was a technical illustrator while in college. By the time I was out of college and doing the R-22 helicopter illustrated parts catalog, I knew every part, nut, bolt, and washer on that helicopter. I knew how it went together, and I knew who made it. I became a member of the then very small engineering staff when I graduated in 1981. At Robinson Helicopter, one of the first things that they had me do was do landing skid extensions on the R-22 helicopter so it could land in snow and mud.
Cool.
Then I designed big floats so it could land on water. I redesigned the instrument console for the beta model, adding more gauges, which is now there's an example of it displayed in the Smithsonian Air and Space Museum.
Wow.
I just found that out. I built an even bigger, more complex instrument panel so the helicopter could be used for IFR training. That's, of course, flying in clouds.
Right.
I redesigned the seats to create more headroom and improve crashworthiness. I also designed an auxiliary fuel system to increase the fuel capacity by almost 11 gallons.
Wow.
I did the exhibits for trade shows. I even did the paint schemes for all the Robinson R-22 models.
That's cool.
And I also paid off my student loan. In about 1984, I began working directly with Frank Robinson on the exterior aerodynamics and interior layout for the R-44 model, which basically was the R-22 multiplied by 1.3. And remember, at this time, this was all on paper. Robinson didn't have computers for design back then.
Wow.
So it was a lot of work, a lot of erasers and starting over again and redrawing lines. Very complex work and very hard to do. As a side note, Robinsons are now the highest selling civilian helicopters in the world.
They are. They really are. Now, after Robinson Helicopter, tell me about your transition to Hughes Aircraft.
Yeah, being a helicopter company, it had its proverbial ups and downs.
No pun intended, right?
No. We had layoffs and FAA work stoppages, and sometimes us engineers were cut back to 3 days a week at a 40% cut pay.
Ouch.
Yeah, I know. I needed to find something better. Joe Dezo, who was a Robinson engineer I worked with closely, departed Hughes Aircraft a few years earlier. He contacted me about some side contracting work that Hughes was designing a head-up display night vision helmet for an advanced helicopter program. So while I was still at Robinson, I started moonlighting at Hughes while learning about optics and head-up displays.
Yeah.
After several months, I finished the helmet project, which also allowed me to get to know the Hughes staff and them to get to know me a little bit.
That's cool. So talk about the time when GM bought Hughes Aircraft and how that affected you and your job.
Well, that was a key turning point where I really decided to make the jump. In the summer of 1985, GM bought Hughes Aircraft for the purpose of transferring technologies from Hughes to GM vehicles.
Cool.
GM wanted to acquire things like the Hughes satellites for vehicle emergency communication, which eventually became OnStar.
Oh, no kidding.
Oh, yeah. And then satellite video streaming, which became DirecTV, and radar for use in a new technology called adaptive cruise control, which is almost ubiquitous nowadays.
Right.
To an important degree, acquisition of head-up displays for cars. I guess then Hughes radar systems in El Segundo, which was about 5 miles from my apartment in Hermosa Beach, called and asked me if I was interested in becoming the project engineer for the automotive side of this new program. So with a little bit of hesitation, then came the Garrett. They said GM had just provided them a new red 1986 Corvette for use as a project development car and asked if I was interested. I think I put in my 2-week notice at Robinson the following day.
Yeah, that makes sense.
No question.
I can imagine. Well, buddy, let's take our final break. When we come back, we're going to talk in segment 3 about the nuts and bolts of the head-up display for Corvette, coming up next on Corvette Today.
Are you ready for a better insurance policy without the Corvette tax? With Agreed Value Protection, the value of your collector vehicle will never change. Plus, you'll save money. Get a quick quote at ncminsurance.com.
Yogi Berra once said, if you don't know where you're going, you'll probably end up there. At True Wealth & Company, we take that to heart. See, at True Wealth & Company, we believe your retirement lifestyle travels through 2 doors. Door number 1, the blue door, gives you more options, financial freedom. Your money outlives you. Every happiness you wish for in life is through the blue door. Door number 2, the red door, is where you outlive your money. You rely on family, friends, or even the state to take care of you. At True Wealth & Company, we're not just financial planners. The best way to walk through the blue door is to have a written plan. Make a work-optional lifestyle a reality with our proprietary True Life Map formula. Look towards your future with anticipation, not apprehension. Having a rock-solid fiduciary partner like True Wealth & Company is essential to effective financial planning. There's no winging it. There's nothing left to chance. Look, we don't want you to become another Yogi Berra-ism. Give us a call today at 913-653-TRUE. Visit us online at retirewithtrue.com. Start your financial independence and work-optional lifestyle today.
913-653-8783. Visit us online at retirewithtrue.com. Investment advice offered through True Wealth & Company, LLC, a registered investment advisor in the state of Kansas.
VetFinders.com is the Internet's original Corvette classified ads website, with classified ads starting at just $25. And every ad runs until your Corvette is sold. If you're in the market for a Corvette, VetFinders.com has over 500 Corvettes for sale from all around the USA and Canada and covering all 8 generations. Visit VetFinders.com, the Internet's destination for buying and selling Corvettes. That's VETTE Finders.com.
You're enjoying the only current podcast on Corvettes, Corvette Today.
Thanks once again for listening and watching Corvette Today, the show that talks about everything Corvette. Corvette Today is brought to you by Wheelcraft. You want your Corvette looking its best? Well, dress it up with bright chrome or black chrome wheels. Visit wheelcraft.com and learn about their advanced PVD chrome finishing. They can refinish your wheels or do a wheel exchange, and you get a 5-year warranty. So visit wheelcraft.com today or give them a call, 833-639-4231. I'm your host, Steve Garrett. With me is the man that created and designed the head-up display for Corvette. His name is Steve Stringfellow. In this final segment, we're going to get into the nuts and bolts. Now, Steve, you were tasked with the job of adapting the Hughes technology into the C4 Corvette. Talk about some of those hurdles that you encountered during that adaptation.
Well, at first I just joined Hughes Aircraft, and I had a lot to learn. I had a great mentor named John Ferrer, who was a guru with optics, and he loved to build models like me. John had some ideas on how we might do this, but we needed to use the Corvette to see if the concept worked. I needed to get drawings from GM, get the windshield angles and driver's eye position, and any information I could about what the space was underneath the dash. The HUD had to fit. I must admit that I had to do a little bit of automotive product evaluation drives while I waited for the drawings to arrive. That was a lot of fun, and I guess the rush of adrenaline really proved to me that the Corvette really needed to have a HUD in it.
Yeah.
So that kind of enthused me to go along with the job and kept me going, of course. This was super exciting. But I guess when the drawings arrived, I started drafting the design on my board. This was getting great. I actually had a Corvette on my drawing board, and I was designing a HUD for it. Wow, this was so cool.
Yeah.
I couldn't think of a better job. I put together a list of specifications from our human factors folks and drew a box around the optics that could provide the right size of image and the right position.
Yeah.
John showed me the sight lines, and we calculated the reflection angles and put where the HUD needed to reside to fit properly. But from the drawings, I could see that the space was being occupied by defrost ducts and structural brackets and wire harnesses. Too many things in the way, which concerned me a little bit. We moved the C4 up to the top floor of the radar system's parking structure, where facilities had fenced off a secure area for us to use as an automotive development area. And we had a glass company come out and remove the windshield for us, and we ordered several spares just in case. Out came the toolboxes, and it was time to remove the dash and get started. We were starting to dig into it. Besides cutting a hole in the dash pad, it's pretty obvious that there was a few ducts and steel brackets that needed to be sacrificed to really get the HUD in, but that was my job. It was funny because I was working late one night and security saw sparks flying in the upper floor of the parking structure. And they rushed up to see real quick what was happening, and there he was wearing a lab coat and goggles, holding a die grinder, cutting into a Corvette. You should have seen the questions. The looks on their face were just priceless. Anyway, I kept on going after that, but I had to come down and tell management what happened the night before.
Sure.
But they were glad I was putting in the extra hours and working late. In the following days, we got the coated glass mirrors and we mounted them into the box. An electrical engineer had wired up a bright blue-green vacuum fluorescent alarm clock display to accept the vehicle speed signal.
Okay.
Kind of put all this together, and then I snugly mounted the HUD model into the car, which really consisted of only 2 mirrors and a display. Got that into the front of the dash, and I made all the necessary power and signal connections. Turned it on, and it worked amazingly. That night, I drove up and down the 6-story parking structure doing 180-degree turns at each ramp level, and I think there were like 2 turns at each level, so there was about 12 turns over this whole thing. I was using the HUD to see how fast I could go between the next turn. I'd start out at 25 and maybe get up to 28 or 30, and pretty soon I found myself stopping on the brake and hurry up and making the turn. But I could see what that speed was when I hit the turn going around that area of the parking structure. Luckily, it was night and there were no cars in there.
Yeah.
One time I looked down, big mistake. I looked down at the speedometer really to see what the speed was that way, and I scared myself to death. I realized never look down in critical situations. And it really told me that I learned the safety benefits of the head-up display. This was the coolest thing. And I guess one thing I did notice on the HUD at that time, it was one of the first times that we really kind of thought about this, was there was a second ghost reflection behind the first one that had kind of come and go whenever I moved my head around. We really had to find a fix for this. It wasn't right to have that 2 ghosts in there.
Sure.
So the next day I showed Ron Smith, who was one of our holographic scientists, what was going on with this. And he calculated that there was a very small set of waves in the windshield glass. And the ghost would appear and disappear on one side of the wave and pop out on the other side and go up and down depending which side of the wave you were on. Then he calculated the angle of the wave, which is a very small number, kind of intensive milliradians. A milliradian is about 5,000ths of a degree.
Wow.
So these are very small numbers. And the calculations were very dependent on the windshield angle and the thickness and the curvature.
Yeah.
And it really required the anti-lacerative layer that's between the 2 layers of glass to be thickened at the top about the thickness of a garbage bag. And so that's about all it took.
Wow.
So he eventually applied for a patent on the wedge windshield, which is found in all the HUD cars nowadays. It was kind of fun because we organized management reviews after that. We had test drives. My management confidently reported to GM that we now had a HUD to show them. The CEO of General Motors, Roger Smith, who was key in the purchase of Hughes aircraft, arrived and witnessed it for himself. He gave it the thumbs up for a production program.
Wow, that's pretty cool to have Roger Smith there and give you the thumbs up. I mean, that's the big guy, right?
You betcha. He was very important.
Wow. Now, since it didn't fit in the C4, what other GM cars got the HUD?
At that time, Roger saw how simple it was compared to other HUDs that he'd seen that were more expensive than the whole car. And I think he saw that this design was within reach and could be affordable. Since the Corvette was GM's leading technology platform, it was really a shame that there had to be too many changes that were necessary to make it fit.
Sure.
But the next cars in the GM pipeline were the W platform, 1988 Olds Cutlass Supreme, and Pontiac Grand Prix.
Yep.
So myself and several other Hughes managers traveled to Detroit to see the new car. We wanted to see what this W car was all about. We gathered some information, we talked to the platform engineers, and we even had our HUD Corvette shipped to GM for them to see what all the excitement was all about. While we were at the GM Tech Center, I had the opportunity to show the car to Pete Collegian, who is the interior designer for the Corvette.
Okay.
We drove around the lake, and I could tell that he was thrilled. The best part was parking in the design staff garage. Pete said that the biggest complaint that he had about the CO4 Corvette was parking. He could never see the front of the car. When I told him that the HUD was calibrated to the front bumper and he could use it as a parking aid, he was thrilled. So I told him to park the car 4 inches from the wall. He stopped, got out, and looked. Sure enough, 4 inches from the wall. He was literally in tears.
That's so cool.
You could see the influence of the HUD on Peter's 1991 Corvette interior redesign. That lowered notch that you see in the middle of the instrument panel up on the top, that's where he visualized the future HUD being. He was a true visionary. He was amazing.
That's a cool story. Talk about how Delco works into this HUD story.
Wow. Well, in about 1986, we learned that GM had merged us, Hughes, with Delco Electronics. We really created an independent subsidiary called GM Hughes Electronics, or GM Hughes HE. And I guess the thinking was that Hughes didn't really do high-volume automotive productions like Delco.
Right.
The merger might help bring Hughes technologies like the HUD to market quicker. So now we had two really large companies and one HUD for the W car that became a key project. Suddenly, my little HUD project now became huge conference rooms full of suits and ties. And I know there was a lot of negotiation and organization that needed to take place. And I could tell there was a lot of dollar signs flying around in there.
Sure.
Well, eventually, Delco Electronics, Kokomo, assigned a great team of really talented production engineers to work with us. Everyone understood that the world had never seen a real HUD in a production car before. Now the race was on to make this the first. When I say real HUD, I mean optically projected to the front of the car, not just a reflection off the inside of the windshield like Nissan tried.
Gotcha.
Much of the Gen 1 HUD work was done at the Advanced Vehicle Engineering Center in Pontiac and in Kokomo, with Hughes surprisingly kind of taking more of a technical advisory role.
Interesting.
The world's first production automotive HUD was introduced in the 1988 Oldsmobile Cutlass Supreme Indy Pace car, which was driven by famous test pilot Chuck Yeager, who, of course, was the first to break the sound barrier.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Oh, yeah. This HUD was soon to be followed by the W Platform 1989 Pontiac Grand Prix. Following all that excitement, I began working with the windshield suppliers and was also tasked with designing a small HUD based on the automotive design for the Hughes corporate jet.
Oh, wow.
It's a Cessna Citation, beautiful jet. They had me designing various advanced HUDs. I did several one-of-a-kind HUDs for different cars. I did the first Bonneville HUD prototype, and I even did a HUD for a land speed record S truck.
Wow.
The biggest issue with the Gen 1 HUDs when they first came out was the bump that it created. Apparently the negotiations that were made later on with the HUD space and the IP with the W engineers wasn't very successful. And the HUD became a large styled box on top of the IP. The images were not exactly shaped and positioned as planned because the windshields didn't really match the drawings that Hughes was provided to do the optics. There was also a considerable hiccup between Oldsmobile and Pontiac, twin windshields, basically from the same platform they were supposed to be. But since they were made at two different glass plants, the shapes were entirely different. One glass plant was an electric oven and the other one was a gas oven, something like that. But as it turned out, they were completely different. That kind of created further misalignment between the two cars.
Wow. So the Gen 1 HUD became the first ever automotive HUD, but it had growing pains. So what happened after that?
In 1989, I was sent back to Detroit and to the glass plant several times to assist with a lot of the problems. Then eventually, with the carrot of the HUD and the future Corvette, I was asked if I wanted to move from the beaches of California to Detroit as a resident engineer for Hughes technology transfer.
Oh.
I kept thinking, Corvette.
Yeah.
And my fiance's parents lived in Pennsylvania, which is close by. So she agreed to making that move to Michigan. Might be a good thing for us.
Sure.
We got married and we made the move. And I guess after several years, I had spent a lot of time with the design studios, doing high-tech looking optical displays for show cars, which was a lot of fun. But my attention was grabbed by rumors of the C5 Corvette that was being conceptualized at the advanced stages. About then, the GM Advanced Electrical Group asked me if I would consider becoming a Michigander and wanted to know if I wanted to join GM full-time. They'd give me a company car and everything. And
wow.
This was great. And so my wife and newborn daughter, they both agreed we would stay.
Nice.
So now was my chance. I guess the Corvette being my goal, I knew we had to plan ahead. No bumps on the dash, no brackets or ducts in the way, no vibration, and a windshield that was a really good optical match. Now was the chance that we could do it and do it right.
Nice. So ironically, GM had other cars with a HUD already. Let's talk about them and how they fared with the HUD.
Well, by now, several years had gone by, and Delco had done a smaller bump Gen 2 for the Grand Prix, Bonneville, and the Park Avenue by cutting the glass mirrors down to about 60% of their original size. So this thing got a lot smaller, but at a compromise of eye box and image size.
Sure.
Also, they were doing a larger Gen 3 HUD that was underway for the 1994 Grand Prix. Besides vibration, the problem was all the optics, the main mirror, the full mirror, the cover lens, they were all made of injection molded plastic.
Oh.
The design was good, but the tools and the molding processes introduced lots of additive distortion between all the parts. So HUDs were not getting the praise and the sales that I would have expected. I was watching all this really closely. I attended many meetings involving the future cars, only to see the HUD scratched from the content list due to high price and perceived low demand.
Huh. So to keep the HUD technology alive then, you needed to do a HUD in the next Corvette, and it had to be the best optical quality possible, I'm sure.
You bet, Steve. The world was going to see this car, and this seemed to be like the last chance to get it right. HUDs are generational. If it didn't get into one generation of vehicle architecture, it might be 5 to 10 years before there'd be another chance to get one in.
Sure.
Luckily, in 1992, the Advanced Vehicle Group heard I was the HUD guy and asked me to work with a designer to try and package a HUD into the future Corvette architecture. Now is it. This is really getting exciting.
Yeah.
I was told that they had been given a CAD model of the HUD from Delco Electronics, and that's what they were required to use. But it didn't fit.
Oh.
They were told the Corvette couldn't afford to tool a new HUD because the sales volumes were going to be too low.
Huh.
I didn't think that was really the case because 25% or so of 32,000 cars is 8,000 HUDs, which seems like a lot, but back in those days, you had to have a good business case and had to be able to make a lot of parts to make the business case work.
Sure.
A Grand Prix HUD wasn't going to work in the next Corvette, so I started a new design just for the C5. No more HUDs on drawing boards. We were now using high-end computers with accuracy and speed, and the designer that they gave me was really talented on the computer and was able to follow my directions really closely. The design was looking really good, and there was a big cross-car beam originally in the way of the perfect position where I wanted to put the HUD, which got kind of frustrating. I didn't know what to do then. But then I found the structural engineer, and his name was Roger Johnson, fantastic guy. And he told me that his wife had a HUD in her car and she loved it. And so he offered to change the beam shape and create a pocket for me in the front of the dash for the HUD to fit.
Nice.
His main reasoning was someday he could take a Corvette home to his wife and show her the HUD.
Yeah, yeah.
So thank you, Mr. and Mrs. Johnson, if you're out there.
If you're listening to Corvette Today, thank you very much.
They were very helpful. Anyway, I had successfully designed a low and flush HUD package for the C5 with no big bumps or interferences and presented my effort to the vehicle integration team. Following that meeting, Fred Galosh from the Chevrolet Central Office sent a voicemail to Chief Engineer Dave Hill, encouraging that I be maintained in the Y platform, saying that when others had said the HUD couldn't be packaged, I had found a way to do it. Thank you again, Fred, if you're listening. That HUD design became the critical placeholder while I was brought into the Corvette Electrical Group in 1993. I took over the C4 cluster responsibilities, and then we transitioned to the design of the new instrument cluster for the C5. And I knew very well that the HUD was literally right behind it. There was a lot of debate over digital versus analog speedometer, and at the launch center, there was a big decision made to have the cluster be analog and the HUD would be provided to provide the digital speed.
Okay.
Then I needed to bare my soul to the team about the windshield shapes and timing. I was concerned if we introduced the HUD the first year that we wouldn't really understand the new windshield shape in time to design and tool a new HUD optic to be able to match it. We'd bring the HUD optics to the Bowling Green and design to match the computer surface, and the glass would come to the Bowling Green plant having its own kind of unique shape.
Sure.
They wouldn't match each other, and the optical quality would probably suffer from that point on. I guess the analogy to that was kind of like you're investing a lifetime's worth of prescription glasses for a baby that's not even born yet.
Yeah, yeah.
Everyone in the meetings understanding that, I got the nod, and it was decided that the second year, being the convertible, the HUD would be offered in 1999 as a new feature. That would give the glass plant in Elizabethtown plenty of time for the glass shape to settle down.
Okay.
I could then laser scan the actual production glass surface to design the optics for a perfect match. Plus, I'd accurately know the radius of curvature, the angle, and the thickness to be able to calculate the wedge in the glass to eliminate that ghost I was concerned about right out of the gate. This was fantastic.
Wow.
Next was the sourcing. What supplier was I going to trust and select for the HUD? This was really important to me. For me, it was the optical quality, delivery timing, and cooperation to do whatever it takes to make this HUD the best. For purchasing, of course, it was price. I think we had about a half a dozen qualified bidders. I worked with Delco and Nippon Seiki, who were the chosen suppliers to work for the C5 blacklight instrument cluster.
Okay.
And we had a lot of others from Germany and Japan who were all very qualified. But I guess during the technical interviews, we had each supplier bring an example of their best quality main mirror for all of us to review to see who was really going to be able to do the best parts. Delco and Seiki brought actual HUD-like examples, but the Delco part was still the injection molded part from the Gen 3.
Huh.
The Seiki part was like nothing I'd ever seen before. It was a perfect surface with no distortion at all.
Nice.
It was very impressive, I think, to everybody. We did everything we could to lower the price of this HUD. We had to make this whole thing work, and if it was too expensive, it may not fly.
Sure.
We even removed the need for a processor, and we ended up plugging the HUD into the back of the instrument cluster. Since they share the same information, the cluster could run the HUD, and the data would always match.
That makes sense.
I guess in the end, Nippon Seiki came in with the lowest price, and they agreed to match all the purchasing targets. And they were very intent on learning and following my directions really closely. Coincidentally, I think they're now the world's largest producer of HUDs.
Wow.
And the C5 HUD started production in 1999 and grew from really a predicted volume of 25% to over 90% when we offered it as a free flow option. This is before the HUD was packaged into a lot of the higher trim levels.
Right.
HUD was not offered originally on the C5 Z06, but became standard equipment due to the popular demand. I recall Dave Hill being asked during a meeting one time, how come the HUD was not there for the first year of the Z06? We were concerned about weight. The second year, Dave, I know you were concerned about weight. Why did you put the HUD back into the Z06? And he said, how much does the HUD weigh? About as much as a hot dog and a beer.
That's funny.
So we forego the hot dog and the beer, and you'll have your weight savings.
There you go.
As far as a most requested option, C5 HUD became second only to the manual transmission.
Wow, that's really cool. What was the display on the final version of the head-up display for the C5?
We tried to add all the important content into the C5 HUD and made sure we had a good way of being able to display it all. So, of course, we started out with speed, and because the speedometer went up to 200 miles an hour, we had to be sure we had an extra 2-digit in there. So the speedometer actually, when it goes into kilometers per hour, we put in the speedometer that will go all the way up to 299 kilometers per hour. We also have, of course, turn signals, high beam, tachometer and shift light, check gauges warning, fuel gauge, oil pressure gauge, coolant gauge. All these are reconfigurable. You can add and subtract content as you need.
I bet there was a lot of great content from some of the Corvette websites about the HUD as well, weren't there?
Oh, that was really fun. I'll read some of these for you that I have written down here. I get a kick out of reading these things. I guess the first one here, it says, at first I figured it was just gadgetry, but it really is nice from a use standpoint. Here's another one. This is great. My HUD saved me from a bunch of tickets.
I can see that, yeah.
Yeah, I can too. Here's another one here. It's possible the best option offered on Corvette. Without a doubt, it is not only a convenience to the driver, but promotes safety every moment you're behind the wheel of the car.
That's a great statement.
I agree with that 100%. A Corvette keeps one's eyes where they're supposed to be, on the road.
Yeah.
Here's another one. Once you've driven a car with a HUD option, cars without it seem to be missing something.
Definitely.
And everybody has told me that. They say,
Yeah.
gosh, I got into my other car and it didn't have it and I missed it.
Yeah.
Here's another one here. The HUD is great. It takes a week or so to get used to, but after that, you won't want to drive without it. As others have said, it makes driving safer since you do not have to take your eyes off the road to see the speedometer and the other gauges.
Yeah, that all makes sense. Now, at the last count, head-up displays are found in how many vehicles?
Well, last I heard, there were over 130 different models, and now I've head-up displays from over 30 different car manufacturers.
That's pretty amazing, buddy. That's really cool. Steve, thank you so much for taking the time to be on Corvette Today. This has been so much fun and so cool.
Thank you for having me, Steve. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks again for listening and watching Corvette Today. And be sure to tell your family, friends, and other Corvette enthusiasts about the Corvette Today show. And thanks to our sponsors, Wheelcraft. Want to dress up your Corvette with bright chrome or black chrome wheels? Visit wheelcraft.com to learn about their advanced PVD chrome finishing. They can refinish your wheels or offer a wheel exchange for most models, and it comes with a 5-year warranty. Visit wheelcraft.com today or call 833-639-4231. Soul Performance Products at SOULPP.com, the official performance exhaust of Corvette Today. Ciocca Corvette at CIOCCA-Corvette.com. True Wealth & Company at RetireWithTrue.com. Also, Aerolarri Wheels. Get $100 off your purchase with the new promo code CT111 at Aerolarri.com. And Hendrick Chevrolet in Kansas City at ChevyUSA.com.
Thanks for checking out Corvette Today on podcast and YouTube. If you'd like to contact Steve with ideas for Corvette Today, you can email him at stevegarrettdj@gmail.com. Garrett has 2 R's and 2 T's. That's stevegarrettdj@gmail.com. Also, sign up for email notifications at corvettetoday.ck.page. Follow Steve and the show on social media on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Threads at Steve Garrett DJ. Thanks again for listening and watching Corvette Today.